Imagine our world, but not as we know it today. Picture a planet teeming not with one kind of human, but with many. 100,000 years ago, this was the reality. Earth was home to at least 6 different human species, each adapted to its own corner of the globe. In Europe and Western Asia, the robust Neanderthals thrived, built for the cold. In the east, the mysterious Denisovans inhabited the caves of Siberia and beyond. On the island of Flores in Indonesia, a tiny species, Homo floresiensis, hunted pygmy elephants. And in Africa, our own ancestors, Homo Sapiens, were just beginning to stir. This was not a linear progression from one species to the next, it was a world of human diversity. These were not monsters or primitive ape men from a forgotten time. They were our cousins, our relatives in the grand family tree of humankind. They loved, they mourned, they hunted, and they fought for their place in the world. For hundreds of thousands of years, this plurality was the norm. The idea that only one human species would dominate the entire planet would have seemed utterly bizarre. It was a world where you might wander over a mountain range and meet a different kind of human, one with a different build, a different way of life, and perhaps even a different way of thinking. The Earth was a human patchwork quilt, each patch a unique expression of our shared ancestry. Think of it like the world of big cats today. Lions, tigers, leopards, and jaguars all share a common ancestor, but they occupy different territories and have distinct characteristics. This was the human world for most of our history. The Neanderthals were the lions of Ice Age Europe, powerful and resilient. The Denisovans were the elusive tigers of Asia, known to us only through a few fragments of bone and a wealth of genetic data. Our own species, Homo Sapiens, was just one player on a very crowded stage and by no means the most impressive. So, what happened? Where did everybody else go? This is one of the greatest mysteries in history. The disappearance of all other human species is a puzzle that continues to challenge scientists, historians, and philosophers. Was it a tragic accident? A series of unfortunate climate shifts that wiped out our relatives one by one? Or was it something more sinister? Did the arrival of Homo sapiens in their land spell their doom? Was our survival predicated on their extinction? This is not just a question about the past, it is a question about ourselves. It probes the very nature of our species and asks whether our success has always come at the expense of others. For a long time, the prevailing theory was simple and linear. We imagined a neat progression, clumsy, brutish species like Neanderthals giving way to the more intelligent and sophisticated Homo sapiens. It was a story that flattered us, painting our ancestors as the pinnacle of evolution, the rightful heirs to the planet. But the evidence tells a far more complex and unsettling story. Neanderthals were not dim-witted brutes. They had large brains, possibly larger than ours. They cared for their sick and elderly, buried their dead, and created simple forms of art and jewelry. Then, around 70,000 years ago, something changed within Homo sapiens. This is called the cognitive revolution. Something changed in the wiring of the sapiens' brain. We don't know exactly what, perhaps a small genetic mutation, but the consequences were enormous. Sapiens began to show truly novel thinking. Evidence appears as complex art, jewelry, boats, oil lamps, bows and arrows. We also see long-distance trade networks, a new level of social organization. Armed with these new abilities, Sapiens launched a second, unstoppable wave out of Africa. The timeline accelerates dramatically. Between 70,000 and 45,000 years ago, Homo sapiens spread across Eurasia. We reached Australia by boat, a feat of planning and navigation. Around 45,000 years ago, we arrived in Europe, the Neanderthal heartland. For a few thousand years the species coexisted, but the balance shifted. Sapiens grew while Neanderthals dwindled. By around 40,000 years ago, Neanderthals were gone. Last pockets vanishing from the Iberian Peninsula. The final act, Sapiens reached the Americas around 16,000 years ago. Crossing the Bering Land Bridge from Siberia into Alaska, everywhere a wave of extinction followed. The question, what exactly happened inside our heads? The true secret to our success, it was not a better spear or a stronger arm, it was language. Of course other animals and other humans had language. A monkey can cry, "Careful, a lion!" Another can shout, "Careful, an eagle!" But human language, specifically the language sapiens developed after the cognitive revolution, was unique. It was astoundingly supple. We could connect a limited number of sounds and signs to produce an infinite number of sentences, each with a distinct meaning. This allowed us to absorb, store, and communicate a prodigious amount of information about the world around us. We could discuss the location of berries, the movement of a bison herd, the best place to find flint. But the most unique feature wasn't info about lions or bison, it was the ability to talk about things that do not exist at all. This is the power of fiction. We became the only animal that can speak about myths, gods, laws, and nations. You can never convince a chimpanzee to give you a banana by promising infinite bananas in chimpanzee heaven. Only sapiens can believe such stories. This ability to speak about fictions is the most unique feature of our language. It allowed us to create and believe in shared myths, our ultimate weapon. This new linguistic ability had two crucial consequences. First, it allowed for detailed social information, what we might call gossip. It's not enough to know where the lions are, it's far more important to know who hates whom, who is sleeping with whom, who is honest, who is a cheat. This kind of information is the glue that holds larger social groups together. Secondly, and most importantly, the ability to create fiction allowed cooperation on an unprecedented scale. Two Neanderthals who had never met would have found it difficult to cooperate. But two sapiens from different bands could cooperate if they both believed in the same tribal ancestor spirit. These imagined realities have allowed us to organize ourselves in the millions. This was the true power sapiens unleashed upon the world. So, this cognitive leap led straight to better technology and hunting techniques. While Neanderthals were skilled toolmakers, their technology stayed the same for hundreds of thousands of years. But Homo sapiens, after the cognitive revolution, became relentless innovators. Suddenly, specialized tools started popping up. Bone needles for sewing warm clothing, spear throwers, more force and accuracy, oil lamps lighting up deep caves. This technological dynamism gave us a huge edge. Let's take the needle for example. Sewing fitted, layered clothing. A total game changer in Ice Age Europe. Neanderthals might have draped animal hides. Sapiens made tailored parkas, trousers, boots. That meant better insulation, staying warmer, conserving energy, being able to travel farther to find food. It also led to lower infant mortality, a much greater ability to survive brutal winters. A tiny bone needle represents a huge conceptual leap, imagining a complex product and making specialized tools to create it. The arms race wasn't just about defending against the cold, it was about offense too. Sapiens invented deadlier hunting weapons. The spear thrower let hunters throw darts with far more velocity. That meant hunting big, dangerous animals from safer distances. Then came the bow and arrow, even more profound. Weapons plus smarter group hunting strategies, planned and communicated through complex language, made sapiens the most efficient, deadly predators the world had ever seen. We could systematically wipe out entire herds of mammoths, bison, reindeer. This tech and organizational superiority put pressure on other species. Neanderthals with heavy thrusting spears mastered close-quarters ambush, but they couldn't compete with sapiens coordinating complex distant attacks. In the end, it was a showdown between reliable tradition and a whirlwind of innovation. In this Stone Age arms race, the innovators had the ultimate advantage. Sapiens pushed north into frozen Siberia, developing tailored clothing, building clever shelters, and managing fire with exquisite skill. From Siberia, they made the final great leap. They crossed into the Americas, spreading with breathtaking speed, adapting to every environment from Arctic ice fields to Amazonian rainforests. The expansion of Homo sapiens across Eurasia was not into an empty land. It was into a world that had been home to our cousins for hundreds of thousands of years. The most famous of these encounters was the meeting between sapiens and Neanderthals in Ice Age Europe. For thousands of years, the two species shared the continent. What happened between them? There are two main theories, and they are not mutually exclusive. The replacement theory and the interbreeding theory. The reality is likely a combination of both, a story of competition, coexistence, violence, and love. The replacement theory suggests the encounter was largely one of competition and conflict. Sapiens, with their superior technology, communication, and social organization, were simply more efficient at exploiting the environment. As sapiens populations grew, they outcompeted the Neanderthals for access to scarce resources like deer, flint, and sheltered caves. It may not have been a violent, genocidal war, but a slow, demographic replacement over thousands of years. However, the story is not that simple. The interbreeding theory gained powerful support with the sequencing of the Neanderthal genome in 2010. The results were shocking. Modern humans of European and Asian descent have between 1 and 4% Neanderthal DNA in their genomes. This is undeniable proof that sapiens and Neanderthals were not just competitors, they were also lovers. At some point, on a cold night in a Middle Eastern valley or a European valley, a sapiens and a Neanderthal produced a child, and that child was fertile and had children of its own, passing those Neanderthal genes down through thousands of generations to us. So, what really happened? It seems sapiens did not just replace the Neanderthals, we absorbed some of them. As sapiens spread, they encountered established Neanderthal populations. They competed, they fought, but they also mingled. However, the gene flow seems to have been mostly one way, from Neanderthals into the much larger sapiens population. Over time, the two populations merged, but the sapiens gene pool was so vast that the Neanderthal contribution was diluted. They did not vanish without a trace. A small part of them lives on in many of us today, a ghostly echo of a time when we were not alone. A similar story of interbreeding also occurred with the Denisovans in Asia. By about 30,000 years ago, the process was largely complete. All other human species were gone. For the first time in millions of years, there was only one kind of human on planet Earth. The consequences of this were profound. We became the sole inheritors of the planet, the lone survivors of the human family. This solitude has shaped our psychology and our history ever since. We see ourselves as the pinnacle of creation, fundamentally separate from the rest of the animal kingdom. This sense of uniqueness might have been harder to maintain if we still shared our world with the stocky Neanderthals and enigmatic Denisovans. The shocking reason for our survival was not brute strength or a bigger brain, it was our unique ability to cooperate flexibly in large numbers, an ability born from our capacity to invent and believe in shared fictions. This cognitive leap allowed us to build complex societies, develop rapidly evolving technologies, spread across the globe, and outcompete and absorb all other human forms. We did not win because we were better individuals, but because we were part of a better network. Our success is the success of communication and social cohesion on a massive scale. This story holds important lessons for us today. It reminds us that for most of our history, we were an insignificant animal minding its own business in a corner of Africa. Our current mastery of the planet is a very recent and perhaps fragile development. The same abilities that enabled our rise, our creativity and our capacity for large-scale cooperation, have also given us the power to destroy our environment and ourselves. The shared fictions that unite us into nations and religions can also be used to justify horrific wars and inequalities. Our greatest strength is also our greatest danger. As we stand today, the lone human species on a planet we are rapidly changing, we might do well to remember our lost cousins. Their extinction is a stark reminder that even a long and successful run can come to an abrupt end. Understanding why we survived is not just an academic exercise, it is a way of understanding ourselves. The story of Sapiens is not over. We are now writing its next chapter, and the fate of the world depends on it.